Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 351. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, February the 24th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. A Saturday morning podcast. I haven't done this in a long, long time, but that's where it fell, okay? So I'm doing a Saturday morning podcast, reminiscent of the past. But again, it's a podcast. You're probably not listening on Saturday morning. You might be listening on Saturday afternoon, Sunday night, Monday afternoon. You may not listen to this for another month or so. It's hard to tell. But here I am, the 351st James Strong Show podcast. Topic of today's essay, and I'm going to borrow a line from Bill Clinton. It's the economy, stupid. And that's how he was elected. Was it elected or reelected? I can't remember. But he focused on the economy because when Bill Clinton was president, the economy was very good. So he said, it's the economy, stupid. Just push the economy. If people understand the economy is good, they'll like me, they'll reelect me, or elect me. I forget which one it was. Maybe both. And it worked. Okay? It worked. And really, the economy, to me, is probably, from a secular standpoint, forget family, forget faith, forget any of that. I'm talking about from a just living daily life. If you're young or old, black or white, rich or poor, Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. The economy is very important. How much money you bring in, how much money goes out is very important to everyone. Now, it's not everything, of course, but there's things you can do to call it play the game if you want, but there's things you can do that are smart, and there's things you can do that are really, really stupid. But if you pay attention and do the right thing most of the time, virtually everybody living in the West will be just fine. And we're going to talk about a few things in the economy, a few things that are going on today that are going to change things, the way we do things. It's going to change the way things are based on the way certain things are going and certain legislation that's in place that needs to be changed, or we're going to have more hardships. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between young and old, and that's a big thing because the old are getting older and becoming less relevant, yours truly included. The young are getting more prevalent and are going to be kings of the castle very shortly. So it's important that we listen to the opinion of the young and perhaps persuade them to go a different route. Okay, but we're going to touch on that too. We're also going to, before I do that, there's three things in the news I wanted to mention. Actually, two things in the news, and then one from a personal standpoint based on a book I've been reading. The first thing in the news, and I'm doing this almost every week now, but it's super important. We've always had good and evil in this world. And right now, the United States, Europe, Japan, Korea, the West are the good. The evil are Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. Okay. And the rest are somewhere in between. Okay. They're going to side with this or they're going to side with that because somebody's going to rule the world. The good guys or the bad guys, us or them. And the others are going to have to go with one or the other. Okay. And I really have a deaf ear towards anybody who says, well, yeah, but the United States is this and this. They're no better. We're no better than Russia. We're no better than China. With all due respect, you haven't a clue as to what you're talking about. Okay. Case in point. There's an individual, and they haven't released her name, and I don't know why, but she's a dual citizen, U.S.-Russian dual citizen. Now, I had this conversation with a friend, and he actually said, well, Russia doesn't recognize dual citizenship, and that may be, I don't know, but we do. And this is a Russian U.S. dual citizen, spending time in Russia and in Los Angeles. She's a ballet dancer, okay? And she was taken away. They basically put a hat over her head and took her away. And she's being charged with crimes against the state or something, basically because what they said she's done is, while she was in L.A., she raised money for the Ukrainian army. Now, whether she did that or not, if you're in the United States, you can do that. She didn't do it in Russia. She's been accused of doing that when in the United States. She set foot in Russia. They put a hat over her head and carted her away, and she's going to be tried in a Russian court. And if she's found guilty, she'll probably get life in prison for this young lady. The reason I bring this up is twofold. First of all, don't even start to think that, well, the United States is just as bad as Russia. We're just as bad as China. We're just as bad as North Korea. Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about. That's hyperbole cubed, okay? Second of all, the second reason I say this is the young lady, why is she stepping foot in Russia? Why would you ever go to one of those places right now? Ran by a totalitarian dictatorship, Russia and China, who basically, Iran too, because there's been U.S. citizens in Iran that are detained. Why would you go there when they have a history of taking people that they don't agree with and throwing them in prison for the rest of their life? Why would you ever go there? Now look, Hong Kong is the most exciting city in the world. I'd love to see the Great Wall of China. There is history and architecture in Russia that I would love to go visit. Friends, I'm not doing it because I don't want to risk a totalitarian government not liking the way I smell and throwing me in prison for the rest of my life. So I mention this and I stay on this to stay on task so that hopefully, dear listeners, you won't be brainwashed into some of these knotheads who are saying, well, the United States is no better than Russia or China or North Korea. Look at what they're doing to us. You don't know what you're talking about. I mentioned earlier, and I'll be mentioning later in the podcast, the difference between young and old. And never has there been a more difference between young and old than the baseball player Nolan Gorman. Now, who is Nolan Gorman? Well, if you're a Cardinal fan, you know. Okay, Nolan Gorman he's a ball player. He's 23. He'll start his third year with the Cardinals now, second full third year. So he's a very young man. So 23 years old, super young, okay? Good ball player, has the potential to really be good. He has a bad back, okay? So he's doing things to fix this because if you're 23 years old and you already have a bad back, that's not a good thing. 43, sure. 23, no. So he's doing things to fix the problem. And one of the things he did is he showed up to spring training 15 pounds lighter. Now, he wasn't a fat guy to begin with, but he was a big guy, okay? And he lost 15 pounds because he wants to be healthier. He wants to carry less. And think about it. Your legs, your back, everything, if you're carrying 15 pounds less weight, especially if it's just pork, you're going to move quicker, move better, not hurt yourself. So they asked him, how did you lose 15 pounds? What's your secret? And here, dear listeners, is the difference between the old and the young. Gorman is the young. How did he lose 15 pounds? He changed the type of popcorn he's eating. He didn't even stop eating popcorn. He changed the type of popcorn that he's eating. That, my friend, is a sign of youth. So basically, his sacrifice wasn't even a sacrifice. He probably stopped eating the palm oil and sugar encrusted popcorn that has, 300 calories per bag and started eating regular popcorn that has 30 calories per bag. Okay. So just by eating a different type of popcorn, he lost 15 pounds. That, my friends, is the magic of youth. One more story before we get into the essay. And I wanted to talk about Johnny Carson And everybody knows of Johnny Carson. Those of you that are older watched Johnny Carson. I just finished a book about Johnny Carson written by Henry Bushkin. Henry Bushkin was his closest friend and lawyer, business manager, fill in the blank, for 18 years, okay? And I never knew a lot about Johnny Carson. I knew he had a lot of money. I knew he was from Nebraska. I knew he had been married and divorced lots of times, but that's basically what I knew. Johnny Carson was arguably the saddest individual I've ever read about. Now, again, this is according to Harry Bushkin, okay, who perhaps had an axe to grind because he was his closest friend. Then after a 3-minute conversation, he was fired and never saw the man again. He cut him out of his life. So perhaps Bushkin had an axe to grind. However, he was very complimentary towards Carson in many respects. But the guy was rude, egotistical, unreasonable, alienated everybody you could think of, but made a ton of money. In fact, in the 1980s, at the peak of The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson made $25 million a year and owned the rights to the show. Now I think, well, why would NBC give him something like that? Because NBC was basically a broke company. They had 1 or 2 television shows making money for them. And the biggest one was The Tonight Show. The Tonight Show made more money for NBC than all their other programs combined. They made $50 million a year from The Tonight Show with sponsors. That's why they could give Carson half of that, plus let him own the rights to the show for later on. Even taking all that into consideration, he was rude, he was selfish, he blamed everything on his mother, and successfully alienated every human being in his life. He was a 4-pack-a-day smoker and was basically, nobody really cared because, yeah, he smokes 4 packs a day. He drinks like a fish, but he plays tennis every day and he's very fit and he doesn't look bad. Well, like everybody that I've read about, you read about these celebrities or people, the wheels start coming off in the late 50s, when they're in their late 50s, if you don't take care of yourself. Well, Carson kind of took care of himself from a health standpoint. He ate pretty well and he exercised a lot, but he smoked like a chimney and drank like a fish. So in his early 60s, the wheels started to come off. And when they did, he had emphysema. He had heart disease. He had a heart attack. He had open heart surgery. Had some type of heart surgery. Don't know if it was open heart or not. I forget. But he had emphysema, so he couldn't play tennis. And then the wheels really started taking off. But here's why I mention this. Because when Johnny Carson died, he was, I think, 80 years old, 81, 82, something like early 80s, okay? He had emphysema. And if you think about it, when you're dying of emphysema, basically every effort or every movement is an effort. So you have to basically lie in a bed and not move, and you have trouble breathing. And every breath becomes harder and harder and harder. And you know that one of these days, very soon, you're not going to be able to take any more breaths. And when you can't, things will become foggy, your mind will start to fade, and you just die. When Johnny Carson died, he was worth $450 million, almost $500 million. He had alienated everybody in his life. He had married 4 times, divorced 3. He was currently separated from his 4th wife, who was 30-something years his junior, but had alienated her as well. And when he died of emphysema, he died in a hospital room all by himself. No wife, no children, no friends, no family of any type. Nobody was with him when he died because he had alienated everybody so badly that they just didn't care anymore. Think about that. Because we're going to talk about it. It's the economy stupid on the essay here. But think about it. Wouldn't you love to have $450 million? And in 2005, when Carson died, that was really some money, okay? That was a ton of dough. Put a zero behind that. That's what it was worth. Basically, he could do anything he wanted, buy anything he wanted. I mean, he bought a wife 30-something years younger than him, and that still didn't work either. But as he's laying there dying, how much money let's say, if he could, he just said, you know what? I'll give $1 million for every good breath I can take. And he could buy 450 of those. He'd have probably done it. But that's not an option. He had no one there to hold his hand, no one there to comfort him, no one there to make him feel better. So we all tend to think the grass is greener on the other side. We would all like to say, man, I wish I had $450 million. But before you wish about that, if you had Johnny Carson money, you'd have to have Johnny Carson's life. Would you really want that? I will make a bet, dear listeners, that nobody listening to the sound of my voice is worth $450 million. I would also bet that no one listening to the sound of my voice would have traded places with Johnny Carson at that time. The moral of the story, appreciate what you have. Don't be sore because you don't have something more. Okay, to the essay. It's the economy, stupid. The first thing we're going to talk about is the biggest thing out there in the West. It's our freedom of movement, okay? How do we get from point A to point B? Yeah, we take planes, we take buses, we take trains, but for the most part, we drive cars. And what's the big thing with cars? Is it the ICE, the internal combustion engine, or is it the electric car? Now, many people, myself included, have said, look, eventually electric cars are going to eclipse internal combustion engines. I still think that they will eventually. No time soon, though. The government still wants them to. But what's the big thing with cars? Look, as soon as they get the price of the batteries down, everything will be okay. Okay? And I agree with that too, by the way. I did a story on this several months ago, but it's raised its ugly head again. When the price of batteries goes down, the electric cars will be more affordable. People will embrace them more. What's one of the biggest ingredients in a battery? It's lithium, okay? In fact, the world's most valuable lithium company last year announced plans for a $1.3 billion plant in South Carolina. It's going to transform South Carolina. In fact, it's a high-tech project out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Albemarle is the company. They have plants in China, the U.S., other places. They're the biggest lithium producer around, okay? But they're now saying, not so fast, because the price of lithium has gone way down. Translation, the plant won't be profitable. Translation, Albemarle has deferred spending on the project amid company-wide costs that include layoffs and delays with other investments as well. Lithium and nickel, which is another ingredient in batteries, have been stalling projects and closing mines to save cash like crazy. In fact, lithium prices are down as much as 90% since the start of last year. The price of nickel is about half of what it was last year. So you think to yourself, well, great, Strong. You and everybody else is saying electric cars will be what we need as soon as the price of these batteries go down. Well, the ingredients for the price of the batteries have gone way down. They've gone so far down that they're not economical to mine anymore. That, my friends, is a huge, huge problem. Because if they can't find the ingredients to make the batteries, they can't make batteries. And what does supply and demand do? Okay, well, we need lithium, so we'll buy it. They'll raise the price, then they'll buy it, and the price of batteries won't go down. So there's all types of economies of scale that cause things to be reduced in price. But sometimes you get to the point where, it's not getting any cheaper. It's not going to cost any less. And right now, this snapshot in time is where we are. We're soon going to have another shortage of lithium because the price is down 90% from this time last year or the beginning of last year. So I guess 13 months ago. Nickel, half. That is huge. So what is Tesla and Ford and all these other companies who are making electric cars going to do? Especially because the government's saying, hey, in fact, what is it, California? In the 2030 something or another, you're not going to sell gasoline cars anymore. Well, if you can't buy a gasoline car, and if an electric car costs you $100,000, what's the average person going to do? Well, probably do what they're doing right now. Move away from California. Staying on the same vein of it's the economy stupid, okay? Everybody know Dave Ramsey? He's a radio guy. He's a evangelical Christian finance guy, and I like Dave Ramsey. He's 63 years old, so he's not a young man. I like to think 63 isn't particularly old either, but he's got this theory, and he's got this theory on saving money and buying this way and living that way so you can build wealth, etc. And I will say this, if you follow his program, you're going to be fine. And I agree with probably 90% of what Ramsey says. It's a few things that he says that I don't agree with. Two of them are, never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever, ever get a credit card. Well, I love my credit cards, okay? Because with my credit cards, I get all kinds of points for my hotels. Because I have credit cards, I travel to beautiful places and I don't pay for a room, okay? Now, here's why he says don't get a credit card. Because most people aren't disciplined enough to pay it off when it's due. And then they accrue debt, okay? Now, if you are one of those compulsive people who absolutely cannot do that, well, then fine, don't get a credit card. But if you're disciplined, having a credit card is fine. It's just fine. He's also against spending on luxury goods. And I think spending on luxury goods is just fine, just so it comes from your access. In other words, if you've paid all your bills and if you've got enough money in the bank, if you've reached all your goals and you have extra and you want to pay cash, buy that luxury good with cash. I've done that with cars. And I could tell you that cars are my passion. I love cars. But I've never taken out a loan to buy one of my cool cars. Never. I've paid for it with my access, okay? If you've got enough money in the bank, if you've set a goal, I need to have X in the bank. Okay, I have X in the bank, and now I have this extra. Now you can throw it in the bank and have even more still, but why not buy something you're happy with? So those are two things that Ramsey says that you should never, ever do, and I disagree with him, but for the most part, he's right. Many young people don't agree. One of the things Dave Ramsey says, if somebody says, oh, woe is me, I don't have any money. He'll say, well, how often you go out and eat? Well, not very often, only 3 or 4 times a week. He says, stop it. Eat rice and beans and save your money. Well, young people don't want to eat rice and beans, okay? In fact, don't go into debt. Don't get a student loan. Work your way off. Work your way through college. Go to a state college. Go to a junior college. Get a grant. Get something. But don't borrow money. Young people say, "Well, no, I want to go to college, and I'm going to go ahead and get a student loan, and then maybe pay it off, and maybe not." Okay, and then come out of college with $100,000 in debt, getting a job making $30,000 a year, which is foolish. The other thing many young people don't like to do is Ramsey says never get a car loan. Now, for the most part, I say that, but sometimes I think you have to, just so you limit that car loan. I mean, an 8-year note for a used car is stupid, but maybe a 2-year note for a brand new car is not so much. Anyway, young people say, look, I'm going to have my student loan because I want the education, and I'm going to drive a nice car. So I'm just going to have this debt, which is fine. But don't start crying because you don't have any money, because you're paying everything in interest, okay? Interest payments are very expensive. If you don't pay interest, you can have a lot of extra money. And some people, and I don't like to use the snowflake term. I don't like to use the term woke, mainly because there's 18 different definitions of woke, and I don't understand any of them. I don't understand which is the right one. And so since I don't understand it, I don't like to use the term. But a lot of people get all, I'll use this term because I know what it means. A lot of people get all butthurt because people say things that offend them. And a lot of times they think, well, you're saying this because you're racist, or you're sexist, or you're ageist, or you're something. And maybe they're just saying it and you don't like it and you're using it as an excuse. There's a lady, Naomi Israel, okay? Naomi is 23 years old. She's black. And she started following Dave Ramsey's advice, but then was offended by him because of something that he said. And I researched this, and he did say this. But remember when we had the COVID-19, the pandemic stimulus money, okay? And I'm not saying everybody got it, but a lot of people got it. We got it, my wife and I, okay? They gave us $1,000, $2,000, but forget what it was. But you just got it. Hey, here it is. COVID's bad. Here's some money. I thought it was the stupidest thing the government could have done in my life. But I didn't turn the money down. I took it, okay? I think everybody did. I don't think anybody turned it down. I certainly didn't. But what Ramsey said was, look, if you're depending on this stimulus money to get by, you're probably screwed already. So Naomi Israel decided to divorce herself from Dave Ramsey's theory because Dave Ramsey is racist. Now, he didn't say anything about race, but she interpreted it as being racist. Because what she believes is, well, most people that got this stimulus money are black. And so since he said something about most black people, he's a racist. Well, guess what? I got the stimulus money. I'm not black. I am part Tunisian, but that's another story for another day. But she thought he's a racist. Okay, I have never, and I've listened to Dave Ramsey a lot, I have never, ever, ever had him refer to race. In fact, the only time I have him ever refer to color is when he's talking about green, money. To say that he's racist because he said that if you depend on stimulus money, you're pretty much screwed anyway. Actually, Ms. Israel, you're the racist because you're making the assumption that black people only got the money. So it's a racist statement. When people look at things that way, it's ridiculous. So she showed him, she stopped following his program and went into debt. Who did she show? Miss Israel has a college degree. Miss Israel is not a very smart person. A lot of young people think that way. Old people too, but young people more than old. Young people tend to get more butthurt than old people. Old people tend to throw out the middle finger and do what they want to anyway and basically ignore the knotheads. Young people get butthurt and decide to do the opposite, even if it's a self-inflicted wound. There's another lady. Her name is Mindy Phillips. And Ramsey says, if you're going to take out a mortgage, in fact, if you're going to borrow money for a house, that's fine. But only take out a 15-year mortgage, because the amount of money you pay in interest on a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage is a bunch. Okay? Usually the 15-year mortgage is a little less, a lower interest rate. Plus, you're only paying half the time. Okay? And this lady, Mindy Phillips, says Ramsey is wrong. 30-year mortgage is fine. 40-year mortgage is fine. Everything's fine. Why does she say that? Because she's a mortgage loan originator. That's what she does for a living. So basically, it's like Dave Ramsey says, don't use a credit card. My job is selling credit cards. Of course, I'm going to disagree with Dave Ramsey because it's putting money in my pocket. So Ms. Mindy Phillips is disingenuous because thinks Dave Ramsey is wrong because what he says is don't spend all your money with this knothead. Spend less money with this knothead. And she makes more money on a 30-year loan than she would a 15-year loan. Of course they're going to say that. It's like a used car salesman saying, you know what? Don't buy this car that, don't buy this Cadillac. Don't buy this Lincoln. Don't buy this Audi. Go ahead and buy this PT Cruiser because really, if you look at your money, you'd be better off if you just paid cash for this PT Cruiser instead of paying money for this luxury car that costs 6 times more and will probably be repossessed in a year or two. They're never going to say that because they don't make money doing that. Sometimes young people can be short-sighted. Now, I personally don't think that it's because the young are stupid and they're going to hell, and the whole world's going to a hell in a handbasket because the young people are going to rule the roost one day, and they will. But here's the dirty little secret, and here's the silver lining to this dark cloud. Here's use any scenario or that you want. Young people, the people that are young right now, one day very soon will be the captains of industry and rule the world. But when they do, they won't be young anymore. They'll be middle-aged or old. And dear listeners, if you are one that's middle-aged or old, think back. Do you see things differently now than you did when you were young? Of course you do. And there's no reason to think that they won't see things differently either. Last but not least, inflation. The stock market kind of took a little bit of a dump earlier this week. And then they said, artificial intelligence is going through the roof. So it skyrocketed again. The stock market is at record rates right now, record highs. Even in Japan, I mean, with the Nikkei finally eclipsed its former all-time high, which was back in the 1980s, by the way. So like a 40-year, it was 80s or 90s, I forget, like a 30 or 40-year dead period for the stock market. But now it's past that point, and even they're making money again in the stock market. But inflation is real, okay? And inflation numbers are funny because two things they don't include in the inflation numbers are gasoline and food, which who doesn't eat? Almost everybody uses gasoline. Absolutely everybody eats. Those that don't eat, they're not going to be included in the statistics in a couple of weeks, all right? So everybody eats, but they don't include food in the inflation numbers, which is bizarre to me. Food has gone through the roof. It's not only gotten more expensive, but there's something going on called shrinkflation. And what I mean by that is, you know what, this package, it was $5 a year ago. It's still $5. So it hasn't gone up, right? Nope. Used to be 16 ounces. Now it's 12. So it's gone up. What would that be? Quick math. 20%? It's gone up a lot because the package doesn't cost any more, but you get less for it. Okay. So if you go for a cost per pound, which is how I do things, not cost per package, cost per pound or ounce or gram or whatever. If you do it that way, then you can see the true cost of a product, the true inflation cost. In fact, many stores will have the unit measure on there, and you can compare the two. And you know, quite often the big, if you buy the big package, sometimes, usually that's cheaper, but not always. Sometimes you can buy 2 packages, and they're less than the one big package, and the little package is half the size. So if you buy 2 1-pound packages, they may be $10, but the 2-pound package is $11. So save $1 if you buy 2. You know what I'm talking about, okay? But inflation has certainly reared its ugly head, and I think nowhere more has inflation reared its ugly head is in the cost of eating out, the cost of going to a restaurant. And it doesn't matter if it's fast food or if it's a Applebee's type restaurant, what do they call that, casual dining, or if it's a nice place, okay? But the price of food is unbelievably expensive, especially when you eat out. And I get it. I mean, when the trophy wife and I were coming back from Puerto Rico a while back, we stopped at the San Juan airport and got a bite to eat because we were going from San Juan to Fort Lauderdale, Fort Lauderdale to St. Louis. And I said, look, we need to get to the airport a bit early. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We got to the airport. I said, because that's where we're going to have to eat lunch, because we have a half an hour layover in Fort Lauderdale. So we're already going to be humping it. And if that plane's just a little bit late, we're really going to be humping it to get to where we need to be. So we're probably not going to get a chance to eat in Fort Lauderdale. So let's get a bite to eat here in San Juan. And I had a Cuban sandwich with a glass of tap water. She had a burger and fries with a glass of tap water. The food was horrible, and the bill was $55. Okay, for a really bad meal. But that's what stuff costs. Okay, now I know airports sometimes are more expensive. I get that, but if you go out to a pretty nice restaurant, I'm not even saying super fancy, pretty nice restaurant, it's easy to spend $100. Especially if you have a drink or two beforehand and a wine with dinner or something like that. It's nothing to spend $100. And if you're going out to eat 2, 3, 4 times a week, friends, that could be $200, $300, $400 a week you're spending at a restaurant. Now, younger people will say, well, look strong. I'm not going to be like Dave Ramsey, eat rice and beans, beans and rice. I'm not saying that you can do that, but here's what you can do. Here's what we did last night. We had a nice dinner. We had salmon with garlic toast, fresh vegetables, couple of drinks, and a dessert. Less than $20. You think to yourself, wow, where did you go? Strong, you just said it costs $100 for a nice meal when you go out. We didn't go out. We cooked it at home. In fact, I cooked it at home, most of it. The trophy wife made the vegetables. But basically, we each had a beer before dinner. I had 2 beers before dinner. I seasoned and grilled the salmon with spices from my garden that I had dried and set aside. Garlic toast, 4 pieces of garlic toast from a loaf of sourdough bread we had bought before. That was about 20 cents. Salmon was $10, by the way, for a nice pound of salmon. A pound of salmon is enough for 2 people, at least for the trophy wife and I. You think to yourself, Strong, where did you get salmon for $10? Try Aldi, friends. You can get a nice piece of salmon for about $9.99 a pound. Sometimes it's $11.99, but it's about $10 for a nice piece of salmon, okay? Try Aldi if you don't believe me. The garlic toast together with olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and some of the spices from my garden, about 50 cents, okay? Maybe less, maybe more, but about 50 cents. The vegetables were about $2. The beers, it's a 12-pack of Bud Select, okay? 3 beers, $1 a piece, $3 for the beer. Dessert was a leftover brownie that the trophy wife had bought a week or so ago. And so it's $4 for that, all right? So dinner was less than $20. And it was really, really, really good. So it's the economy, stupid. You want to eat good and you don't want to spend the money? Psst, here's a secret. Don't tell anybody. Stay home. Cook it yourself. It's really that easy. Stay home and cook it yourself. Cooking's fun. I'm very blessed. My wife is an unbelievable cook, the best cook that I know. But when it comes to grilling, I'm pretty doggone good at it. And I've experimented enough to know that, you know what, this isn't so good. This is pretty good, but this is really good. And when you throw salmon on a grill, and what I do is I put the spices on it. I cook it with indirect heat. It takes about a half an hour to cook the salmon, but again, it's indirect heat because the coals and the wood are in one spot and the salmon itself is in the other. It gets smoky. It's fantastic. Garlic toast with olive oil. How do you get better than that? Vegetables, it's healthy. A fudge brownie. How do you get better than that? Less than $20 for a very good gourmet meal. You can do it. You can live the life you want. If you just take a few minutes, pay attention, and maybe put a little bit more effort than the next guy. Because, friends, it is the economy, stupid. If you pay attention and have a little bit more money at the end of the day, things always get a little bit easier when you have a little bit more money at the end of the day. That's it. We're done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. Send me your emails. I love hearing from you. I do respond to all my emails. Share the podcast. I appreciate it. That's it. We're done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.